So much, Richard and Joe, for putting this together, and glad to see everyone. Happy Saturday, folks. Unless anybody's joining from the other side of the world, good to see you all. So I'm just so pleased, and as you probably heard from my bio, I'm a little bit of a collector of programs and trainings, and so taking all of that and kind of looking at, what's out there, how can we turn this into something that could be really useful. So with that, my partner and I and some colleagues kind of took a look. We were just noticing that folks, a lot of trainings out there are these 8-week programs, and it's hard, right? When you're really suffering, who wants to sign up for 8 weeks? You don't know where you're going to be, a day from now. So what we did was actually condense all of the knowledge that we've picked up from different fields, academia, from going to trainings, and we created an hour-long training. And you all get about 15 minutes of that this evening just to share skills. So we call it's almost emotional first aid, triaging the nervous system. So we call it mental and emotional self-management. We know self-management is really the key to achieving long-term goals, not picking up that substance or not engaging in another destructive behavior. But how do we do that, right? And I think there's so many of us that probably have wanted to make some kind of change and then fell short in some way because of either overpowering emotions, habits, tendencies that were not really in alignment with where we thought we wanted to go. So I'm going to be happy to share that with all of you. And I imagine because this is coming out of trauma-informed work, some of you may already be familiar with some of the practices. I'm going to focus today on resourcing. So actually just giving our nervous system a break, right? Because our minds are these wonderful things. We can go into the future and the past, and that's a great human ability, but it's also something that can really get in our way as we go through day-to-day life, right? So resourcing is a simple tool that we can actually communicate to our nervous system that actually we don't have to worry, just like you would tell a little kid, it's okay. Just, you can take a break. And when I heard these skills, being a very cognitive based person, I thought that's not useful. We need to think our way into better action and, solve the world's problems. And what are we going to do giving our nervous system a break, right? Well, over the years, and it has taken quite a long time. So I'll just kind of preface it with that. If I introduce this to you tonight and you think, oh yeah, I practiced that, and it was all right, it helped, or it didn't help, or whatever you might think about it, I'm going to invite you to try to bring this in. If you're noticing yourself getting ahead of yourself, feeling down, judging yourself, judging others, see if you can bring this resource into that moment. Take your mind and your body to a more healing place. So with that, I do have a few little slides that we can take a look at. And before we go into the practice of resourcing, I just really want to talk a little bit about the nervous system. Like I said, we're starting to understand it more. It's coming into focus in our broader world, just like mindfulness and these other great tools. But, do we really understand it? And then with that understanding, how can we work with that mind-body connection every moment? So nervous system is a very elegantly designed system, and it does its job, right? It's designed to get us away from danger towards safety. And we all probably are familiar with the fight or flight response. That can happen when we do encounter danger. You almost get in a car accident, you see a bear or a mountain lion in the wild, whatever the case might be. So it's really designed to get us out of that short-term danger, right? And then you go and you recover, you shake it off, but that's not what's happening, right? Because we're in this chronic stress and trauma. So our nervous system doesn't know, in some cases ever, that it's safe to relax. We could be reliving experiences. And it really, the fascinating thing about our nervous system and the mind-body connection is that we don't differentiate between threats in the immediate environment. I need to get away from that car or that mountain lion, and our mind. I have a meeting with my boss. I have this coming up. So same physiological challenge in the body, right? Yeah, and of course, thank you, Jojo. We can definitely, people, our close contacts can become threats or not. But I think a lot of us can really point to that person in our life who might really need this, right? They need this. And let's see, we all have a nervous system, which is a wonderful part of being human, right? And it is there to serve us, but does it kind of get in our way, right? So one more just piece of, how this nervous system really works for us is that we're always fluctuating, right? Things are happening. We need to kind of get up and go, get out of bed, get dressed, go to work. So we have certain states of arousal, meaning kind of attention, we're paying attention to our environment, and that's normal. And also, of course, with our fluctuations with our nervous system, emotions are closely connected, right, to our thoughts and our bodies. There's a cognitive and a physiological response with emotion. So we can easily get overwhelmed by that emotion. And, of course, we don't need to sit here and analyze it. We can probably think of a time where it was just, I am so angry. I don't want to talk to anyone. And it could be something big or it could be something small. But in that moment, we feel a threat. So it doesn't matter if our life is in danger or, we have a minor annoyance. Our bodies can respond in the same way. So we can go to one of two places that can be challenging. One is hypoarousal, and that's where you don't want to get out of bed. You're just done. You want to kind of close the door on any responsibilities. We call it a freeze state. So that can happen in the moment, but it can also be chronic, right? And then we have hyperarousal, where it's kind of more energetic, fearful, anxious. I need hypervigilant, right? Scanning the environment for those threats because they could come at any time. So those are the two kind of extremes, right? But we also have this zone of resilience. And in that zone, it's, you might find an annoyance. Somebody might cut you off. You can't find the thing you're looking for, but you can roll with it, right? Because you're in your resilience zone. You're doing okay. So really the goal of this short training that we created, and then, hopefully people do make it a practice and work on this, in the moment, day after day, right, is to widen the zone of resilience, right? So, there are days, if you don't get a lot of sleep, you haven't eaten, your resilience zone might be like this. Other days you're doing okay, you got some self-care, you're feeling good, resilience zone might be wider. But overall, we also can work to expand that ability for resilience. So repeated practice of mental and emotional self-management skills can certainly change the way our bodies respond. We can get ourselves out. We can recover more quickly. And I do happen to be a researcher, so we do have some studies supporting this, right? A quicker recovery from a stressor, whether it was self-induced or watching some kind of video. So yeah, wouldn't we all like that, to not have to stay, in that unsafe place? And so that's what these tools offer. And I'll just share my own experience briefly. And I believe it was a grounding, which, thank you, Richard, for the wonderful grounding. That one can be used anytime, just noticing the support of a chair, whatever you're sitting in. And we were practicing these skills, and I had somebody kind of shadowing me, and I finally snapped out of my head and into my body. And I had this wave of emotion that I felt, it was very overwhelming. I felt a little bit angry toward the person who was kind of in that other chair. And he said, okay, well, what's going on with you? And I said, I'm not used to feeling supported. And it was just that actually touching into that support that I realized that I had been missing that in my own experience. And it's not that the support wasn't there, right? But I may have been too anxious or just not kind of connecting to it. So just making that connection in that moment, I realized how powerful these skills can be if we're willing and able to practice them. And so I'm also coming out of the meditation world, and I know it's a powerful tool, and we actually will get to practice some meditation here in just a few moments. But even before we go and start trying to work with our mind and train our attention, I believe these skills are so crucial because people can get lost in meditation, right? Trying to sit and work and overpower and muscle through versus starting from that place of safety, letting the nervous system know that this is okay, that we are grounded, right? That we have a resource. So that is something that I do in my work now, is to try to make sure that people have at least a connection with grounding. But I actually want to talk about resourcing today because I can find this can be a very powerful tool. So for resourcing, it can be really anything, anything that's going to bring you some comfort, ease, peace. Or if you're in that place where maybe things just aren't looking so good right now and you're just not finding a resource, see if you can find something that is just not super awful. There might be one good piece of it, right? So resources can also be mixed. It doesn't have to be 100%, wonderful all the time. See if you can find something. So for me, it could change, but there's a few things that I want to point out before we go into finding our own resource. So I'll just pick one from today. I got a chance to go out and bring water up to the Pacific Crest Trail hikers. So we were hiking in a gallon of water each to go up and have it there so they don't have to come all the way into town if they run out of water. And I can tell you, even after years of working with my mind, 10, 12 years, I'm sure, I'm just now beginning. I can definitely go to places where, we were 1.7 miles in. It was really only 3 miles, but in my mind, we're never going to get there. We need to turn around. This is not working. It was infinite. And then I had to resource myself and really look. I had my watch, so I knew where we were. And I said, no, this is finite. We'll be there in, 1.3 miles or whatever it was. I am kind of a clock watcher and a watch watcher, which anyway. So one of the resources that I found in that moment was the smell of the pine needles. And that always reminds me of summer, being out with these beautiful views. And it's just a very specific scent of kind of baked pine needles that, maybe you love it, maybe you hate it. But for me, it's like, okay, we're here, we're out, we're moving, life is good again. But if I had let myself say, this is never going to work, I might as well call the search and rescue now. Don't do that, anyone. But our minds can really, and to me, it's always fascinating. It's fascinating to see how big of a lie can be fabricated in just a few moments. So I always do try to practice, okay, whether it's resourcing or grounding, giving my nervous system a chance to recover. So then I can say, well, what's true? What is happening? So with that, if anybody has a little piece of paper in front of them, you can jot down a few things, and then we'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll practice our own resourcing. So I told you about the pine needles, and my dogs are always one of my resource as well. And of course, dogs can be a mixed blessing, right? If they're a little noisy or whatever the case might be. So when you're resourcing, you always focus on the part that makes you feel good, makes you feel safe. And yeah, this is not just going to your happy place, it is actually communicating with your nervous system and bringing that resource into focus. All right, so if you have a piece of paper or you don't, it's totally fine. But just try to think of 3 resources in your life. And it could be person, place, thing. It could be a Narnia made up place, whatever it might be. So just take a moment to jot those down. All right. All right, everybody have their 3. I know it can be challenging sometimes, surprisingly enough, but I think we're all a well-resourced and grounded group, so maybe they came right up to mind. And maybe FluxMind is one of your resources, getting to come here and just be with people that aren't going to judge you. You can just be safe and hang out, learn some new stuff, see what you like. All right, so look at your 3 and then just pick one that you're going to focus on. And for this practice of resourcing to be really impactful, we want to bring in as much detail as possible. Right? So what do you could do your 5 senses. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Can you taste anything? So do your best to just bring that resource to mind, focusing all of our attention on whatever resource is coming up for you today. Doesn't have to be a true and lasting bind to this resource, but just whatever's coming to mind. And from that place of groundedness, see if you can bring in more detail about this resource. What does it feel like to be here? Not just what you think, but notice any sensations that might come as you bring this resource into focus. Maybe a smile comes to your face. Perhaps you become aware of tension that might be there as the resource allows you to feel back into your body. Take another few moments to enjoy the peace, serenity, or safety of this place. And then you can release the appearance of your resource. But before we move away completely, see if you can take another moment or two, excuse me, to note what is coming up. What sensations did you feel? And anchor in that sensation of feeling well. So we want to really start paying attention, not just to those sensations of distress that can come up, but what does it feel like to be in that state of well-being? Very nice. Well, good job, everyone. Yeah, and remember, you can keep those resources in mind and practice that anytime. And like I said, I had to go through my own process with it, but I've now understood that it's not escaping. It is giving our nervous system the break that it so dearly deserves because it works for us nonstop. So just taking that little pause for resilience, right? To bring in a different sensation and feeling. So you can keep practicing that. We won't have a lot of time to go into tracking today, but as you practice, as we did with our grounding exercise, right? Tracking sensation, all of these skills really support and enhance one another. And learning the language of sensation, we almost say that this is like learning a new language, and it may be a language that we haven't really heard much or spoken much. So give yourself some time. Be patient if you don't feel anything. There's no right way to experience this. And I just want to make one or two more comments about the nervous system, and then we'll talk about training our attention as well, because that's also mutually supportive to being able to focus in or to hold a resource in mind, right? So, nervous system, beautiful. When we have signs of nervous system balancing, you can feel different sensations. It might be kind of a discharge at the feet. Again, you may become aware of tension in the body because you're actually noting what's happening in the body, right? Other things. So when we're in fight or flight, our digestive system, reproductive system, immune system are all out the window, right? Because those are for long-term survival. Our body, our nervous system is trying to save us in that moment. So if we stay in that, we have reproductive, immune system, and digestive challenges in some cases, right? So once we give our body that resiliency pause, you might notice some gas, because that's actually your digestive system coming back online. Your immune system, you may not note anything that's happening with that, but it's in there now, knowing that, okay, we've survived whatever danger, had come up. So now we can protect this organism. So long-term survival, short-term survival, we always need to be balancing those two systems, our sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Rest and digest and fight or flight. Neither is good or bad per se, but if we don't take this time, we may not get to, that healing that, probably many of us are seeking, right? So with that, I just a couple notes about attention before we go into our meditation. So this, of course, previous skills are really great to get our nervous system into that balanced or resilient state. And, again, we're kind of going back and forth. Our mind might seize on something else. And so we're constantly kind of titrating back, paying attention to what's happening in the mind. And our minds can get stuck. And I used to say it was like an iPod shuffle. That's a very dated reference at this point, but it's just, all kinds of things that, maybe are relevant, maybe are not. So what we do, of course, with meditation is to become unstuck from that and to have some choice. And this is a quote from one of my mentors in positive psychology. To control attention is to control quality of life. So if our minds are going every which way, kind of bullying us, would you want to live with that? Probably not, right? But it takes some time to set up new ways of relating, letting thoughts come and go, and then setting up new patterns, which is, of course, why neuroplasticity is so important. And just like we can develop habits that may not serve our healing, we can develop habits of mind and body that are restorative. So a lot there, and many different ways to practice meditation, as you all know, as you've been coming to FluxMind. So I was really kind of torn between our breath awareness practice, where we just get to follow breath in and out, and our compassion practice, which is really the root of reaching out toward others. I've decided to go with attention training for tonight, because that will support any other kind of states of mind and body that we hope to cultivate. And maybe we'll bring in a minute or two of compassion at the end. So for this, let's shake off all that new knowledge. Hopefully it's in there somewhere. And if not, I can always give you access to it later. So don't worry about that. And we can settle again. And I'll set our timer for 15 minutes. And we have a quote from Insight Timer: "Perfection is the mountain that has no peak." All right, well, thank you for that. All right, so for this, of course, it's great to have your feet on the floor, unless you're on a cushion or even laying in our supine Shavasana position. And allow the spine to be straight. Eyes can remain slightly open. Cast downward. Chin tucks slightly in. And tongue comes to touch the roof of the mouth. We'll start by dropping the awareness into the body. Just noting anywhere you can sense support. Maybe bring a half smile to your face for having discovered this practice and having the leisure and opportunity to practice it now. We'll bring our awareness to sensations of rising and falling of the in and out breath. And see where you're able to track sensation, either at the abdomen or perhaps at the nostrils. Good reasons for choosing either of those. And once you've chosen the object of your practice, see if you can set an intention to bring your full attention to these sensations, allowing no breath to pass in or out of the body without your conscious awareness of it. throughout our practice, any thoughts or sensations are simply a distraction. So do your best when those come up to become aware and then respond first by relaxing. Release anything that's grabbed your attention and return to the object of this practice. Sensations of the in and out breath. If you can allow yourself just this short time to release distractions, worries, concerns. There's really nowhere to go, nowhere to be, no one to be. Continuously check in using our ability of introspection. Find out, where is the mind? Focused on the object of this meditation, or perhaps elsewhere in distraction. Either way, whatever you discover, just gently return to the practice. Breath awareness meditation. We continue with the practice. Just keep settling body, speech, and mind in their natural states, free of effort. Free of concerns of past and present and future. Honing in with a relaxed mind. The rising and falling of the in and out breath. And now for the last minutes of the practice, we can shift our attention to the cultivation of compassion. Bring to mind your own propensity to suffer. Genuine understanding, aspiration for yourself to be free of suffering, and not just suffering, but to be free of the causes of that suffering, so that we do not create further challenge for ourselves or others. Imagine how your body and mind would be in this state, free of suffering. Now we'll bring to mind anyone known or unknown to us who may be experiencing some challenge this evening. Bring them to mind and cultivate the genuine aspiration for their genuine well-being, free of suffering and the causes of suffering. And imagine them and yourself And anyone else in any of the times and directions. Abiding in a state free of suffering. Before we close our formal meditation, just take another moment to anchor in any sensations of well-being from this practice and offer out any of those positive feelings, merits to anyone who may be in need.